Welcome to Embarcadero's AI Code Camp. This session is a collection of experiences I've had and how I've used AI in a variety of ways to increase my productivity as a programmer. It will include links to a few blog posts I've written and some of the AI chat conversations I've had. The agenda will go through some tasks I've selected from daily work and how AI has helped in different ways for each. All of these are tasks I could have done on my own, but AI either helped me past a mind block, offered suggestions I had not thought of, wrote tedious code for me, or assisted in my research. At the end, I'll mention a few miscellaneous things that don't really fit into these categories, and finally share a link to one of my main sources of AI inspiration, a newsletter called Superhuman. First, a little history about myself. Like many of the older Delphi generation, I started with early versions of Turbo Pascal, both in college and in my first long-term job. I used several other programming languages either for work or as a side interest, or in the case of PHP to build dynamic websites. When Delphi came out in 1995, I quickly threw out the Object Windows library I was struggling with and joined a few others in the Portland, Oregon area to discuss this hot new rad tool for Windows. We decided to meet monthly and called ourselves the Oregon Delphi User Group. When the leader moved to the East Coast, I was the most enthusiastic and frequent attendee and became the default coordinator. And despite my best efforts, I'm still the coordinator to this day. I'm currently using both Delphi 5 and Delphi 12 in my day job, migrating a suite of several hundred programs up to modern code. On the side, I maintain some old programs in Delphi 7 and XE for a few clients I've had over several years, and always start new projects in the latest versions of Delphi. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Fearless Cross-Platform Development with Delphi to help those like myself upgrade their VCL skills to work with FireMonkey to develop for platforms other than Windows. Finally, I'm happy to be considered an Embarcadero MVP and do my best to support these products. So, without further delay, let's jump into it. A quick note. To increase clarity and in the spirit of using AI, several parts of this presentation use AI narration generated at resemble.ai.
This first task involved writing a DLL in a modern version of Delphi to call a SOAP web service from an application built with Delphi 5 which does not have the necessary components or security protocols to support SOAP web services. I noticed the XML to send was pre-packaged with the SOAP envelope. Usually I would start Delphi's SOAP importer to get it set up and then use the generated class. But looking at this, my mind went blank. It seems silly now that I have the simple solution, but I decided to give AI a try. At the time, AI tools were still fairly new and ChatGPT was what everyone was talking about. So opened it up and simply asked, how do I call a SOAP web service from Delphi without using the WSDL importer? The response was a great explanation of how to call SOAP web services, from creating the request XML to sending, receiving, and parsing the response, and even handling errors. It was a little overkill for what I needed, but it got me started. It suggested using the indie libraries. I wanted to use the newer net HTTP client ones instead, and it rewrote the code for me, albeit with a syntax error. In the end, I ended up with exactly what I needed without wasting too much time because I had drawn a blank on how to perform this simple task. This is an elementary example, but I want to point out a couple of things. 1. AI can help jog your memory of things you already know. 2. AI can offer solutions that aren't always what you want, but leads you to correct it. Sometimes unlocking new ideas within yourself and coming up with a better solution. In this case, my use of AI is like using a rubber duck. Someone to talk to that, by merely voicing your problem, helps you realize the solution. You can read about this experience and see the code that evolved on my blog.
This next task involved fixing a Firebird database for a customer. A friend of mine wrote an insurance agency management system over 20 years ago and still maintains it for customers around the US. He's nearing retirement and doesn't want to rewrite the Delphi 2007 app to support multiple platforms or to make it a web-based app. So, I worked with him to set up a couple of servers in the cloud into which his customers can log in via RDP and run the program there. The application uses the Firebird database with the server easily handling all the database requests for each agency. This has been in place and running quite well in the cloud for over 5 years. Once in a while, the program loses its connection to the Firebird server. Usually, it can quickly reconnect and continue without anyone noticing. Rarely, though, Firebird still thinks the client application is connected and refuses a second connection. When this happens, the easy fix was to simply reboot the Firebird server. That's fine for an in-office installation, but is not okay when it will affect 22 other offices and dozens of other users in the cloud. I used to be quite familiar with all its command line tools, but I don't use Firebird very often anymore. Neither he nor I could remember how to address this problem, nor could we come up with the right keywords to reveal the answer with a Google search. Finally, I asked AI, how do you tell Firebird 2.15 to clear connections from a database? The response was quick and exactly what I needed. It listed the exact tool and the parameters that solved the problem perfectly, and the customer was up and running in no time. This use of AI is what I'd put in the instant recall category. Again, you can read about this on my blog if you're interested in the details. A common task often attributed to AI when coding is refactoring. I have 2 examples to share. This first one takes a look at a long set of if statements, each based off the first character of a string variable. The solution was pretty simple, and the task was given to AI to retype it for me with the following prompt. Refactor the following Delphi if structure using a case statement on trans 1. It did exactly what I asked, and the code was perfect. But I got to thinking, how would AI solve this if it wasn't told how to optimize? So I tried a slightly different prompt. How would you refactor the following Delphi if structure? There were 3 options presented. The first one was very similar to my approach, but since I had not told AI that trans was a string, it assumed it was a char. We had a short discussion about case statements being based on ordinal values, and it gave me both the indexed string version and the single char version. The second option presented was using a T-dictionary. I could see how this option would be useful if it was pulling these values out of a database, or if there was a long list of entries added at various points throughout the program, but in this case, it wasn't what I was looking for. The third option was touted as being the fastest and most compact solution, using an array lookup with all the key characters in a string, their position being an index into a corresponding array containing their descriptions. While this might be arguably the fastest method, I could see it also being the most error-prone if someone had to modify the list later. These AI conversations were done with Claude in its web browser chat window. I did try Delphi 12's Smart Code Insight feature, also using Claude, and its suggestion was very similar to the first option. Here's a short recap of how that worked in Delphi 12. It puts the modified code in a comment below your section of code that was highlighted. Word wrapping needs to be fixed. The benefit of using AI in this example was to improve code by taking something ugly and turning it into something beautiful. And while this exercise was simple, it was also an interesting learning experiment that illustrates 2 things. First, AI will try to do exactly what you tell it. Second, if you're not specific, it might come up with a different solution that might surprise you. The second example I have for using refactoring with AI is to remove duplicate code. As I was working with a custom table component, I found a function in the class to get a date time string with user initials embedded. That looked familiar, and sure enough, there was a utility class with identical code in another unit. This was another case where I knew exactly what I wanted and did not take the time to ask AI how to solve it. I just wanted the work done for me. This required several edits to both units, which I supplied to AI, and its response pointed out all the places to make the changes. Once again, I used AI to improve my code, this time removing duplicate code.
A great use of AI for coding is writing unit tests. As mentioned previously, a large part of my job is migrating hundreds of programs from Delphi 5 to Delphi 12. This includes a great many library units, of course. There were no unit tests for any of them, and I wanted to not only verify the migrated code, but also document their use for better understanding. My first prompt when starting this was simply, please write unit tests for the Delphi classes in the attached unit using dunit. The explanatory response was rather long. You can check it out at the link on the screen if you're interested. As I looked at the generated code, I realized the prompt needed lots of clarification and refinement. The first thing I decided to change was to use dunitx because it's a more modern syntax and provides greater flexibility with less code by adding test cases using attributes instead of writing additional procedures. However, I found that Claude was better with dunit tests than dunitx, so that required a little reworking after every unit test produced. It also put a lot of assert tests in each procedure. I had to specifically request smaller test case procedures, and it still lumped too many together in my opinion. As I developed tests for more library units, I found that passing date parameters needed to be type-specific. Test cases that passed in 0 treated the parameters as floating point instead of datetime and needed to be corrected to prevent type mismatch error. After several unit tests and several iterations of the prompts, I finally used this one for all subsequent requests, and it worked really well. This was definitely a case of learning how to write a better prompt to get a better answer. The use here, of course, is to reduce the tedium of writing all this code myself. Sure, there are tools and templates that jumpstart unit test writing, but using AI was quicker. Plus, it wasn't constrained by knowing the typical use of these units, so it added tests I would not have worried about. This actually revealed some problems with the libraries that may have been hard to track down later if ever encountered. You can see the results of this prompt at the link here. This is probably the most fun use of AI because it generates a lot of code in real time. You can just sit back and watch it fill up your screen. And that's what we've all wanted from the beginning, isn't it? To make our computers work for us.
The lengthiest AI chat conversation I've had was to research and prepare a presentation I plan on giving on RAD server. I had given an introduction on the topic several months ago to the Oregon Delphi user group. That came together fairly easily because it covered basic things like the software and licensing required, how to install it, and how to write a simple Hello World module and see it working in both the debug server and deployed to production. The next session, though, needed to dive deeply into security and authentication methods. I wanted code examples in areas for which I was less familiar. This resulted in a conversational iterative process where AI presented several suggestions. Then I picked various topics for more information and told it to skip others. It was very much like I was chatting, or perhaps texting, with a fellow programmer. I had been reading sample AI prompts in blogs and articles and noticed many times the prompt will start off by declaring, "You are an expert in," and you fill in whatever topic you want to discuss. I thought I'd try that approach. "You are an expert at Delphi in using RAD server to build REST services." Prepare a presentation on the subject to fellow Delphi programmers where they already know a little about RAD server, but want to go deep on the following topics. Then I listed the topics I wanted to focus on and instructed it to create a set of slides for me. This resulted in an amazing, fully prepared presentation with 28 slides and even speaker notes. It was in text format, so I had to copy and paste to PowerPoint, but the sections of text for each slide were clearly identified and even contained the sample code I wanted. I then proceeded to pick and choose certain slides to either skip or provide greater detail and asked questions of some of the topics it suggested. This saved a lot of time in organizing my thoughts and putting together an outline to share with the group. It was like collaborating with a colleague at a whiteboard. What's more is that the conversation is saved and I can pick it up later to finish it, continuing right where we left off.
Here are a few more things for which I've used AI that aren't necessarily related to my day job. Image generation has been around for a few years now. All the images I use on my blog and that I added to this presentation were built with AI prompts. I blogged about it a few months back. Have you ever written an ISAPI DLL and put it on a Windows web server? The resulting URL can be pretty long and ugly, especially if there are additional paths or parameters. If this is a landing page for a website, you may want to clean it up by using rewrite rules. Doing this on a Windows server with IIS is quite a pain. Then again, it's not easy using the Apache web server either, but there seems to be lots of examples and tutorials out there for that platform. I could not figure it out on my own, even after wading through Microsoft documentation and trying several things. Finally, with several iterations under my belt for AI, I was able to get a nice looking URL. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the chat history for this one. Not too long ago, I needed to write a letter to cancel a financial service. I thought about using a template to make sure I got the addresses in the right place, but on a whim decided to just tell AI to write it for me. All I had to do was copy the formatted wording, add in the account numbers, and print it out. I have a friend who runs a small tutoring business and writes articles for newsletters and forums where her potential clients frequent. She uses AI to help put out articles far faster than if she had to think up and write all the content on her own limited time. I decided to try this out the 1st of April this year, typically known as April Fools, by concocting a new programming language with silly characteristics and ridiculous rules. I had a few ideas but wanted more, and AI suggested several that helped to fill out the blog. All of these uses of AI I've shared have a common theme: saving time. Now, it could be argued that sometimes code that AI generates takes more time to debug than if you had written it yourself, but for the simple tasks I've been using it for thus far, it has saved time, especially for those unit tests that I had to write. I don't use just one AI tool, and just like tools you'd see on a workbench, different tools have different purposes. There's a lot of overlap, but everyone will have their preference. I first started using ChatGPT, like most everyone else, but found Claude was a little better at Delphi, so I actually have a paid subscription there now and use its web interface frequently. A few minutes ago I mentioned AI image generation, and there are several services out there, each with their own unique attributes. I've even had a couple on my phone in the past. For now, I use the web-based artspace.ai to generate images. My voice isn't that great for giving presentations, and so I tried out resemble.ai this week for the first time. I typed in the text of what I wanted to say, selected a voice, then downloaded the WAV file and added it to the slides. I even created a voice patterned after my own voice for one of them. I'd be interested to hear what people think of the different voices for my presentation. Finally, I've recently acquired the domain PNW Delphi and haven't yet had time to build a site there, but went to lovable.dev and typed in this prompt to have it create a complete site for me within seconds. The service still has a few bugs to be worked out, and I probably won't pay to have it hosted there, but you can go to the domain and follow the link to see what it generated, which was actually quite impressive. All the AI engines are constantly leapfrogging each other with features and capabilities. Claude is the one I'm using the most right now and is one of the leaders in this field. I don't know that I'll stick with it forever or that I'll ever totally rely on AI. The bulk of my day still involves manual coding and debugging, and I just can't see how AI will replace many of the functions I perform on a daily basis. But I am using it more frequently and learning how to type better prompts. And I think that's the key I'd like to leave with you today. Learn how to prompt AI to get good results. Or, to repeat a common phrase, to get a better answer, ask a better question. Well, that's all I have to share today. I hope you found some things useful in this presentation, or at least gave you some ideas. Like I mentioned, I have a full-time job, but on the side I still have a small business supporting some legacy code. I also write about Delphi and other tech topics as I can. And if you're interested in the cross-platform book I mentioned earlier, there's a QR code to save you from searching for it. If you're ever in the Portland, Oregon area, check out that Oregon Delphi user group website to see when and where we are meeting. It's usually the third Wednesday evening of every month. Drop in to say hi. We'd love to have you join us. And last but not least, here's a link to my favorite AI newsletter, superhuman.ai. That is filled every day with news and tips and interesting stories of how AI is being used and developed around the world. On their website are links to collections of AI tools and sample prompts, a goldmine for the AI enthusiast. Thanks again for watching.
Okay, we are back. That was a great presentation. Sorry, people asking me questions whilst I'm doing it. Apparently, at some point, my microphone was live, even though the Restream software that we use said that my mic was muted when I was backstage. So I apologize if there are any clicking of keyboards, because I have a very clicky mechanical keyboard. It was not David, it was me. Yeah, oh, Martha said, yes, I turned it off for you. Producer Martha, she's my stunt double when I'm not around. Click, let's mute that. Sorry about that. My mistake. I've probably done that more than once. I don't know. He normally gives me a little warning and it says, you're backstage. Maybe I turn myself live, so to speak. But anyway, nevertheless, what we're going to do is we have David live with us. Hello, David. How are you?
Hi there.
Perfect. And I must show everyone, because I actually have my own copy. And by the way, I don't think you sent me a promotional copy, did you? I don't think so. No, so I paid my own money for this. And it's I tell you what, absolute worth every cent. It really is. It's a great book. And we were both having a laugh about it, saying every so often, you open it up.
Yeah.
To look at things. And I was telling you my problem, which is I get stuck on something. I'm stuck for hours. Oh my God, how does this work in Delphi? What's the problem? And then when I Google the solution, it offers one of my own pieces of code or a webinar I've done, which is really frustrating,
It's one of the purposes of blogging is to be a reference for your future self.
You see, we're talking like two old men now. I'll think about this stuff. Yeah, it's good. And I'm really grateful to you as well for managing the Oregon Delphi Users Group, because I think I've dropped in before now, haven't I? I think yeah, I thought so. I drop in and quite a few and freak people out by going, hello, and like, you're here. But I really appreciate you running that, because the user groups, when Borland went away and then a few other things happened, a lot of the user groups were the only thing that kept the language alive, honestly. And, over the years, the trend has been away from in-person user groups, more into, virtual user groups and the rise of the ubiquitous internet. But the Delphi Summit just proved a case in point again, that actually, meeting like this, even if it's virtual or in person, where you can, don't you all go for curries or something together, or is that another one that might be another group? But someone goes for curries all the time. They go, Indian curry food.
Okay.
They meet in an Indian restaurant and have curries. I don't think it's you guys. I think
no, we usually go for pizza.
Pizza, yeah. So that's a food I can get behind. But I was taught how to cook Indian food at a night school. It's the only food I've actually been professionally trained to cook, weirdly enough. But I always see these user group meetings, and I feel it's a shame that I can't turn up at them and go, actually have the pizza and all the rest of it. But anyway, I just wanted to say, thank you for that and calling you out for actually doing it. We've got a few people commenting. Where was it? This one. Skybuck Flying, which is and it's an interesting choice of username, but there you go. He tried MCP Bridge, YouTube live streamed it, and then Copilot tried to buffer overrun my browser with infinite smileys. Why MCP might be a terrible idea. Oh, really? That's weird. I mean, is this going to be the next thing? Do we think that the AIs will start fighting it out when they start to join in chat windows? I don't think it will be that they'll enslave us. I think they'll just, annoy us to the point of giving up. You said you used it for unit tests. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what was to summarize your overall opinion of it, you think it's useful or not useful?
Well, I think it's very useful for unit tests. And like I mentioned in the video, it isn't constrained by the purpose that you're using the library units for. And so it'll write all kinds of tests that I was like, why are you testing? Oh, yeah, that actually is a good test, isn't it?
Oh,
and
really?
it came up with some, edge cases that I wouldn't have thought of that actually revealed a couple bugs in the program. And I had to modify the libraries just in case those would ever be caught.
Yeah. I mean, you said it's kind of weird to sort of sit back and it's like magic.
Yeah.
They just it's like someone's taken over your keyboard remotely and typing in. I've personally experienced that as well. It's a slightly surreal experience because I don't know about you, but I'm very picky about my IDE. And I'm divorced now, but my ex-wife, who I get on very well with, she was the only person I ever trusted to touch my computer because she's a techie and she also knows not to touch my stuff. So don't fiddle with my code. And she was good at that. Although she used to do things like change my background to have cat pictures and stuff like that. But it's still that little surreal moment where the AI starts to do some code for you, and you are giving up that essence of you as a developer to something.
Oh no. Now, I'm not giving up anything. It generates it and I copy paste into my editor. Like I mentioned in the video, I use Claude mostly as the web-based. And so it's not the expensive, API use.
Yeah.
I do have it hooked into Delphi as well. And I put in like $25 several months ago for tokens. And I think I still have more than $24 left. So I don't use it that much. And I don't use it inside products, but I just use it as an external web interface to kind of help me do things a little faster. So I just copy and paste and then modify and test.
Isn't it weird that, when I did my opening kind of session where I was talking about the rise of AI and it being the next big thing, I mean, I was there for the IBM PC to be invented. That, I'm that old.
Yeah.
And COBOL and, DOS. I even remember DOS being, very basic, not pun not intended there, but a very a very rudimentary operating system. That's the word I'm looking for, with folders and things like that. And I remember CPM really vying for DOS dominance, really. And if it hadn't been for digital research really being stuck by the fact that I forget his name now, but he died in a plane crash. But it really feels like AI is the equivalent of maybe the internet's big burst onto the scene.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting, and here's a parallel that maybe people haven't drawn. Do you remember how we used to have very big telephone bills for dial-up internet? Now, I don't know whether it was true in the United States because I obviously still lived in the UK at the time. But the cost of dialing up these internet services initially was the cost of a phone call, and you don't get free local phone calls. Whereas I believe in the United States local calls were free, I think. Was that right? Or yeah.
Mhm.
So the thing used to be that you dial up internet, you dial a local number, and so you would connect, and it wouldn't cost you anything. And then you pay for the service time
Right.
or something like that. Well, it wasn't the case in the UK, and I remember having some very difficult moments where I had a phone. That's a subtle way of putting it, but the phone bill turned up and it was hundreds of pounds at a time when, your weekly wage was not hundreds of pounds, and that, I think, a parallel there is what's happening with AI. Everybody wants to use this service, but the hidden costs are a bit of a worry. And I think Paul Jackson is saying local was and is free. Yeah, I mean, I'm an American now, so but but I think there's a parallel there between that kind of thing where you're saying I don't use it enough to actually raise a bill that costs you too much. But I think that, as Dion was saying in his session, there is a possibility for that if you're not careful. If you sign up to a service where you hand over your credit card and then keep your fingers crossed that it's not going to drain it, that can happen. And that's exactly like the days of early AOL and all those other services
Or
where,
even cloud services like Azure or Amazon Web Services, you
oh
just
God, yeah,
you leave a compute machine, a virtual machine on and don't, you forgot to turn it off and it's clicking up a bill. Fortunately, they
yeah.
have the budgets that you can set up to warn you and like, oh man, that's getting up there. I better go, shut it down or
I remember a scene in Silicon Valley, the TV series, and the one of the characters had taken over as CEO of some outfit, and it turned out that basically it was a service that was being used by predators,
Hmm.
and every time there was a message sent, there was a fine that would happen. And so what was happening was they had a pinging noise every time they had a new user join or a chat message, and he's like bing, 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 bing in the background. And he's like, oh my God, each one of those is like $50 or something like that. And it's exactly like that with AWS and all the rest of it. You see the compute time and you see that spin round, and
Yeah.
that's real money that's being chomped away there. And Amazon don't let you set a target that cuts off. It sets a budget and then alerts you, but you can raise a bill of $5,000 a month and they won't care as long as your credit card clears. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, I assume they go looking for you with Amazon mafia types or I don't, it's but I think that that's the problem with the AI as well, that it's still not quite mature enough that that competition and that concern has raised the concern to the providers to say, actually, we need to come up with a way that make it our service more attractive and take out the worry for users, because that's going to be a barrier to adoption for the services. That if you think it's going to accidentally cost you money, then you're probably going to be reluctant to use it to its full. And I think that's
Yeah, and then that's why I like the monthly or annual fee, where it's if you use too much in a month, it's going to toggle you or slow you
stop
down
working.
or
Yeah.
stop working. Yeah, but just having an API embedded and you're just using this thing, and all of a sudden you get the bill like, oh, I was using it that much. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's scary.
I always, when I get a cell phone plan, I always get the unlimited one. My daughter's 25 now, but when she was a teenager, yeah, she'd be on that phone 24/7 with all her friends, and I just never understood the people that go, "Oh yeah, it's fine, it's fine," and then they get a surprise cell phone bill for several $100s. You've only got to have that happen once with a teenage child, and you soon learn how to do these things. So, yeah. Okay. Well, if there was one takeaway that you would have out of all of this, and in fact, I think we've got a question here as well. Um, can you make it so we can watch with lower video quality?
That
So,
would be a YouTube setting, wouldn't it?
yeah, internet here is woeful. Yeah, and Bozos Paid is his username. The answer is click on the YouTube thing. Although I see it's on Twitch, but you can change the streaming quality on Twitch as well, I think. So I don't quite know what the deal is, but sorry about that. I'm not in control of Twitch right now. I can't. There's nothing I can do about it. So yeah, if there was one takeaway you would have from this, the whole of your sort of experience of AI, what do you think it would be? What would be your kind of sage advice to someone who's going, well, maybe I should try this. Maybe I should give it a go and see. Where would you?
I would say learn how to talk to the AI, learn how to prompt better. Like I ended with, to get a better answer, you ask a better question. But especially in image generation, all these images that I have either in the presentation or on the blog have multiple iterations before I finally find the right one, and I'll change the prompt just a little bit, and then it will add an extra hand, or it will remove something that I want in there. And you just have to be very explicit, because the AI is going to assume or add things that you're not thinking of. And like especially in the case of unit cases, where I just did a simple one at first, and then created stuff that was not very useful, and I had to continually refine it until I got this great big prompt that then was exactly what I needed for all the rest of the unit test.
I thought it was funny. You said in the chat, the private chat, we had a short discussion. You and the AI, and I thought, that's actually quite funny, because you said that's exactly what you did. Is that right?
Yeah. When that particular conversation happened, and I told it to just refactor that code, I know that case statements can't be based on strings, but they can be based on chars. So when it gave me that solution, that proposed solution, I was like, that's not right. It can't be based on strings. And then it told me that it had assumed that it was char, because I hadn't told it was string. I didn't give it the full context where the variable was declared up top. And like, oh yeah, that's true. It could have been a char, couldn't it?
It's artificially unintelligent. I think that's, and I get that. I mean, it's the same if you had an intern or something like that. And this is how I think of AI as like a junior programmer or an intern. And you go along and you say to the intern, right, create me a bunch of unit tests. And they're not very experienced. They're okay. They're not useless, but it's their first couple of years, maybe, or their first year out of university or something like that. And they'll create some quite naive code. There was a big discussion about T dictionary. And that was Maxi Donkey as well, who's actually an AI guy. And he was saying, well, surely the modern way is with T dictionary. Well, it is and it isn't, because the thing about T dictionary is, in order to use that, you have to pull in some quite big libraries to do that. And if there's no other reason to use T dictionary, because you had some code that had an array in there, and that was his comment, oh, why have you got arrays when you could use a T dictionary? Well, because actually that's more efficient code-wise. You don't have all the overhead of containers and iterators and all the other things that go behind T dictionary. You've got an array. It's a basic, almost mapping directly of memory, and you're indexing it using some very efficient pieces of machine code in the background. Whereas a T dictionary is much more involved. It's much more powerful, but in terms of brevity of code and smaller units, T dictionary is not going to give you that. Now, if you include other things that are containers and stuff like that, then you could use T dictionary, because it's already going to be in there. But with the compiler optimizing the way it does, it's not straightforward.
Well, there are different uses, different solutions for different scenarios. And like I mentioned in there, a T dictionary could be useful if you're pulling stuff out from a database or adding things from several different points in the program. That could be a very useful solution.
Exactly. And there was a demo in Denmark, because I've been traveling around a bit to different user groups, and at the Denmark user group, which was fabulous, by the way. If you ever get the chance to be a speaker there, you really should say yes. because my word, their hotel is like the 5-star experience, and the food is, it was cordon bleu. I mean, it was 6-course meal with wine. Oh my word, what did I do to deserve this? Yes, of course I'll talk to your group. Yeah, I was there all day, 2 days, but one of the guys there used AI to extract a class and build a class, his own class, on the Edge browser library, and he used it. He wanted to use it for some very specific things. He wanted to pick bits out of the web page and control stuff in various ways. I forget exactly what he was doing with it, but it was a good use case, and he did it live in a session. I only just happened to ask him, "Hey, do you want to do this?" at the end of one of my talks, and he demonstrated it, and it was a very compelling demonstration of AI, because it would have taken him days to do the same thing. Now, it did get some things wrong. It hallucinated a few things, because it goes, oh, I'll just, as you said, you get some JavaScript turn up in the middle of the a code where it's just going completely crazy. You're like, are you on drugs? You know, what's going on there? But it also is known to invent functions and say, oh, there's a, you know, an Embarcadero function, and yeah, that doesn't exist in Delphi, and it goes, oh yeah, sorry, I made a mistake, and then tries to get it right next time. So yeah, it's interesting. Maxidonk says unit testing and mocking with dependency injection remains the most relevant path in or 10 plus coding projects in 2025. Bravo, David. There you go. You have a fan from Maxidonk himself. That's good. And Milan says, you mentioned the time saving. You mentioned the time saving features of using AI. Did you experience any personal growth effect? Sounds a bit personal. And have you felt inspired to become more critical and thoughtful about your architecture? So did it lead you to grow professionally? I think that depends on your level of skill to start off with, of course. But
Well, in some ways, yes. In other ways, I'm more lazy because, like, I don't have to type this; I can just give it to AI. But in other ways, as I read the responses from AI, like, oh, that's a great way. I should think about that next time I need to do this. So yeah, a little bit of both.
yeah, I still find the whole thing pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know whether you saw this the other day, but this was, I think I showed this earlier on, but this was created by Dave
Yeah.
Nottage, and I laughed so much. He literally took a screen grab. That is obviously, if people look behind me, up here, there's a teddy bear. You can just about see it.
Yeah.
But that is my childhood toy. I had that when I was 6 months old, so it's pretty old now. It's probably worth a bit by now, I think, but it's an antique. But it's up there. But it what was very interesting about the AI was, okay, it doesn't really look like me that much. Similar, but you wouldn't be able to recognize it was me if you didn't know it was me. It's hilarious. But look at the bear. It's got the bear. It's got the Union Jack. It's got the Delphi helmet, and it's even got my ukulele and part of the borum, which is the Irish drum in the background. Absolutely mind blowing. And you just think, how does it do that? It's generative AI. Is, what they say? If something is you cannot discern the difference between it and magic, then it's magic, and that's exactly what this is. It's so, if you can do that with images, and that seems to have been a real growth area where they've got better and better and better, then I believe that the code will follow as well. I think it's a more complicated subject, but I think your summary is, it's not the answer to everything, but it's the answer to a lot of things, and certainly is a useful tool to add on top of what you do already. Is that right? I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another tool that I use to do my day job.
Yeah. Well, that's great, and I'm getting there. I mean, my job's weird anyway, because I do use AI to generate images. When we do blog posts and that, we use AI to detect whether the reading age is good, whether the search engines are going to like what we're writing, because that's important. You need to, and stuff like that. But I don't actually use it to create videos yet. But that'll be coming, and soon. The fact you use AI voices, I thought was very clever.
Yeah, my voice kind of cracks a little bit and isn't that great, and I stumble and stuff. But I thought, if I can just have an AI representation of my voice, and all of that stuff was stuff I typed into resemble.ai, and
Yeah,
then I downloaded the file, and
I have heard of some companies. There's a company that is getting people who are getting things like muscular dystrophy and ALS, where it's a degenerative disease. And what they do is when you get the diagnosis, they will come along and sample your voice. So they'll train the AI, or they can get video of you, because they only need like 2 minutes or something like that of
it
you
was
speaking. And then they will train it.
very
And
quick.
then when you lose your voice, it will then go ahead and actually make we all know Stephen Hawking's voice simulator, which was iconic, really. I mean, later on, he could have got a better voice, but it didn't make sense to do that because he was so well known. He was identified with that robotic kind of voice kind of thing, which is. But now it would have been possible for Stephen Hawking to have a truly natural sounding voice using AI replication, and so I guess people like me are going to be out of business. As a voice actor and things like that, I'm done.
Well, one of the slides in my presentation was an AI version of my voice.
I
Yeah.
probably missed that one. I was too busy.
And it was, I think it was the first slide that was in my voice, or the first, the one after the very first one was in some voice, an AI voice that wasn't that great, and then the next one is mine, and then there was a few others, but
yeah,
it didn't take very long to train it at all.
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And I think this is the new future. Well, we're getting towards the witching hour, but I'm just going to plug your book again, because anybody that takes the time to write a book this thick, ladies and gentlemen, that's my finger, just so they can get an idea of how thick it is. And also kudos to Packet, who are the publishers, because they are really supportive of Delphi. They're a bit strange to work with for some authors, I know that, but certainly, though they are good supporters of Delphi stuff. Your book is from them, and I know there's a few others. There's a GUI book for FireMonkey and a few others as well. So, my hat's off to Packet as well, and for you for taking time. Thanks, David. For people are scanning your book code. Whoa,
Yeah, and ESICO6 just bought it, so thank you.
Oh, really? Oh, well, there you go.
So,
Did I mention my 50% commission? I'm very expensive.
Hopefully it's useful. It
Yeah,
is
it's
helpful.
good. Well,
Right.
I mean, this is a good thing about my job, is it's a win-win for everybody, because all I'm doing is talking about Delphi and leading people to sources of stuff from people like you who have taken the time to sit down. I've written books myself. I've got 4 of my own books, and nothing to do with Delphi. And I know the effort that goes into it. I used to be a professional technical author, and I've written dozens of big, thick manuals for products that probably don't exist anymore. And it's a lot of work, and it's the same with these videos. For every 30 minutes of a video, someone has spent hours, because you don't. It's not 30 minutes. Even if you watch it through, it's 30 minutes extra. So it's an hour already before you've actually done anything and tweaked it. So
I usually spend about a week.
yeah,
Off and on.
exactly. Yeah. Well, I just throw it out and hope for the best. Not really, but I do put some effort into it. Yeah.
No, I appreciate you, Ian, for hosting this AI series, and for all you do for us developers as an evangelist for Delphi and related products.
I'm a Delphi guy, and people always say, "Why are you so cheerful all the time?" Look at what I do. It's my favorite programming language. I loved it from the very first day it was released, and I get to talk about it, show other people what's good about it, and go and write code for and get paid to do it, and talk to other developers who are kind of kindred spirits. So why wouldn't I be happy? So
Right.
it's the greatest thing in the world. So and I'm always able to help other people as well, which is a nice feeling as well. So thanks for the kudos, but it's all you guys at the end of the day. Okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna have to let you go, but thanks again. And this is David Cornelius, and get his book. All right, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.